Hello and welcome to this presentation on a few more tabs of the Rental Feasibility Workbook for the Federal Home Loan Bank of Topeka's Affordable Housing Program. This video will cover the Housing Proforma as well as the Services Proforma and the Feasibility Analysis worksheet of that Feasibility Workbook. So let's start with that Housing Proforma. So this tab is going to cover the best estimates of your operating performance of the project starting after the project completion and will model the 15-year retention period. If this is for application, this is going to be a best guess estimate using your experience as a developer or your experience as a sponsor of affordable housing. Or if the project is already in operation, you should be able to use your recent operating financials or operating history. If you're a project that is going through project completion, this year one should be the actual performance of that first year of operation so that we can model it through the rest of the retention period. So some important things to note. When you start this off at the top, you'll be entering your vacancy rate that you anticipate to incur throughout the project. So the first vacancy rate and bad debt rate is for year one, and then the second one is for the rest of the retention period. So if you think you're going to have more vacancy in that first year, you can put a higher amount, and then once you've stabilized, you can put a lower amount there. The revenue income, this first number comes from that tab that we filled out way back then, way at the beginning, the rental project worksheet. You can see the $99,000 from there flows over to here. You can enter any other revenue that you expect to get, including some others. If you enter other revenue, be sure to add an explanation of what that is. And then we'll move on down to the operating expenses. Here I've entered some, and then you can fill it out based on your experience. And that will total up there. And again, if you see any red characters or red arrows in the upper right hand corner, you can see the explanations there. The replacement reserves are also here after operating expenses. The annual debt service from here that you see here comes from the sources of funds worksheet, as it totals up all of the debt service and plugs it into the workbook, as you can see there. This developer fee repayment, if you have developer fee, deferred developer fee in your sources of funds, it will automatically calculate the repayment. Or because of this color, this tan color, you can overwrite the formulas as you see fit. And you can do that for these other expenses up here or this cash flow payment item as well. If there are any issues that you have, and if you have any issues, don't hesitate to ask us for help, as we will be happy to take a look at it and guide you through filling this form out. If you have any explanations or you want to provide more detail, be sure to use the box at the bottom. Let's move on to the services proforma. If your project has no services, like this example, be sure to answer this question. Are any service expenses listed on the housing proforma? No. If your project does have services, you still have to answer the question. This question needs to be answered regardless. And again, our regulations require us to split out services from housing related operations. Housing operations and services operations need to be separated. And that is the services proforma. If you do say you are a supportive services on the project information tab, you'll see that this tab expands out. You'll still have to answer the question about are there any services on the housing proforma? Again, the answer should always be no, but we need you to certify that. If you are a services provider or a services project, please enter how you're going to pay for those services with your revenue sources and how you're going to, or what expenses you're going to generate. Okay, and that covers that supportive or the services proforma. The last tab that we have is the feasibility analysis worksheet, and this summarizes all of the information that you've filled out in the feasibility workbook and has most of our guidelines uh, identified. If you have guidelines that are, if you have information or data that is outside of our guidelines, so like for example, this management fee, which is on the housing pro forma, we entered an amount that's higher than the maximum guideline of 15%. In this situation, you can either, if that is the right amount, if the $15,000 management fee is the right amount, then you'll need to explain why you deserve a higher management fee. And we can review that and analyze it to see if an exception can be granted. And you can do that for all of the guidelines that are identified here. Be sure to enter an explanation for why an exception should be granted, or maybe you entered a wrong number and you can update it as needed to make it within guidelines. Once you have this information filled in, save it, and you should be able to upload it to Workbook, to the affordable housing program. That wraps up this video. Please watch the rest of the series for the other sections of the workbook. Reach out to the HCD department for any questions. Thank you for watching.